Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle Tech Talk series. Today we'll be showcasing our cloud-based centralized management product, Untangle Command Center. Untangle Command Center enables IT administrators to quickly and simply manage all of their NG firewall deployments from any browser. Our Chief Technology Officer, Timur, is here to go over all of the great new features as well as demonstrate all the new capabilities that we've recently released. My name is Shannon Miles. I'm part of the product marketing team, and I'll be your host today. Next slide, Timur. Thank you. So just before I pass this over to Timur to start us off, just a few housekeeping rules. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. You can use your computer audio as well. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. We record all of our webinars, and they are uploaded on the Untangle YouTube channel. So you'll be able to rewatch and revisit the areas that you want to follow up on. And as always, we have a couple of team members on hand to help answer questions. So please submit any of the questions that you have through the Q&A box, and we will try and get to those. If you have a specific question or specific network question in terms of your deployment, please send us an email at sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. We'd be happy to help. Now, before I move on, just want to reiterate, this is a highly technical webinar, so if you're not familiar with Untangle and our solution or networking concepts, then this may not be the best webinar for you. We do have a 101 webinar series that covers more higher level topics, and you can get a list of all of those upcoming webinars on our website. And now I'll pass it over to Timur.
Thanks, Shannon, and welcome everybody. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about Command Center. For those of you who don't know, it is our cloud-based centralized management system that allows you to manage multiple Untangle deployments. And this product specifically was designed for MSPs as well as customers that have multi-site locations where you're deploying multiple Untangles, and Command Center provides you a convenient and secure way to both gain visibility into what's happening on these networks, manage policies across multiple devices, as well as provide a remote access to these devices without compromising some of the security by exposing them to the outside world. Having said that, I think Command Center is also a very convenient tool even if you don't have multiple deployments, because it does provide that functionality where you can get a top-level view of what's going on your network without actually having to be physically present on that network. And so in that sense, it provides some good value there as well. So in a nutshell, there's I'm going to go over sort of a top-level overview of the different components of Command Center. And for those of you who are familiar with it, there are a couple of new things that we launched yesterday, along with the 13.1 release of our firewall product, which includes some awesome features like Tunnel VPN, as well as OAuth-based authentication for Captive Portal and the like. But for Command Center, we also managed to add some user management functionality, which allows you to add multiple users to your account and provide granular permissions for them to manage your appliances. Again, a functionality that's more targeted towards an MSP or an organization that has multiple people in their IT department, where you want to have a little bit of granularity of who has access to what. And we also launched global alerts. So again, in addition to the alerts that are generated by the Untangles themselves, Command Center now allows you to define and distribute alerts across all your deployments. And one of the more interesting ways that you can now deploy alerts is through webhooks, and I will go through that in detail through the presentation. So I'm just going to go quickly over some of the top-level views that you get on Command Center, and then I'm just going to dive right into the hands-on demo in a live environment, and hopefully it all goes well, and kind of give you more of a direct taste of what Command Center is all about. So a Command Center dashboard view is very similar to the dashboard view that you have on the Untangle itself, except it actually provides some of the aggregated data across all your deployments. So it will give you basic stats on the number of hosts that you're managing across all your deployments. It will provide geolocation information, And then it will provide some of the top-level aggregated reports from those devices, but again, it will aggregate them all into one, so you can kind of see across all your deployments which applications are using your bandwidth, which hosts are accessing which sites, and so forth. Then on the appliances view, you will actually get a breakdown of very similar information, but it's going to be per Untangle deployment. So you will get the same information about the alerts history for the specific appliances. You will get some of the stats on the appliance itself in terms of resource utilization, the licenses that are assigned to that box, as well as have access to backups if you have those configured that are uploaded to the cloud. And you will also have ability to remote access that box, and that's one of the most commonly used features. And I'll talk a little bit about the details associated with that, because it's a lot. It works in a different way than just simply exposing the admin interface to the outside world, and provide some capabilities for you to expose access to untangles that may reside within a network that would otherwise require a lot of firewall holes to be open. The policy view provides a mechanism to be able to capture individual application configuration from your appliances. So unlike sort of the overall backup functionality that we provide in the Untangle, the policy allows you to essentially take a snapshot of settings that are specific to a particular application, or even specific to a policy, an application configuration within a policy. So on that page, you can actually upload the specific configuration that you have on one appliance into our cloud, and then redistribute that configuration to other appliances if they're compatible versions, and be able to basically manage the configuration across your entire fleet. Then we have the account view. So this is a new addition as of yesterday, and it provides a lot of the functionality that you currently have in Untangle My Account, which we will soon be deprecating, and all of that functionality will be managed through Command Center. And here you have the same functionality that you currently have. You can update your contact information, your payment information if you're a partner. You can manage your partner details in there, as well as manage your subscription, download invoices, all the good stuff. In addition to that, you will have some features that we're adding into Command Center specifically that have to do with security, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. The feature that I just mentioned a little bit ago is the user management. So again, under the Account tab and Command Center, you will now be able to invite users to your account. So these users will receive an invitation, and you'll be able to specify which appliances these users can access. And so when the user logs into the Command Center, they'll be able to get all the same views. So they'll have the dashboard, they'll have the appliance view, and the policy view, but they'll only be able to see the appliances that you actually grant permission for them to see. So if you have multiple IT staff and you want them to manage different locations and so forth, you can do that in this way. And last but not least are global alerts. So as I mentioned, global alerts are essentially allow you to create a rule, and whenever we observe an event happening from any of boxes in your fleet, we will be able to generate a notification. And in the context of notifications, we currently have two setups. So there's the traditional email notification, where you'll be able to say that for a given rule, you want to send an email to a list of individuals with the details of the alert itself. That's very similar to what we have on the Untangle box itself. I think the one advantage of the global alert notifications is that there's one alert that the box itself cannot send out, and that is when it goes offline. By the virtue of us managing the appliances centrally, we can actually tell when the Untangle disconnects from our network. And in doing so, we can generate an alert the appliance is disconnected, and so we can trigger an email notification when that occurs. The second and more interesting profile for notifications is a webhook. And this really opens up kind of a lot of possibilities in terms of how you can integrate Untangle event information into other systems that you may be using. So if you leverage monitoring systems like PagerDuty and incident reporting systems, you can integrate Untangle alerts into these systems and actually follow kind of the similar procedures that you might have for other event management that you have within your organization. And I will go through that in detail in a second. So I think that's kind of it for the top level overview, and I will jump into the presentation itself. Okay. So you can still log in traditionally the way you log in from untangle.com, but as part of the integrating sort of additional user functionality, Command Center now has a separate login portal, and that is www.untangle.com/cmd. So at this point, we're aggregating kind of information from all the devices on this account. There's quite a few, and I was previously told that it's not good to have a webinar where we're just waiting for stuff. So I'll try to come up with some material in the next few screens. But here we got through this pretty quickly, so I'll jump right into it. So this is the Command Center dashboard. So here, if you have basically the overview of your Untangle deployments, you have sort of a snapshot of how many appliances you have, how many of them are offline and online, total aggregate host count, and I'll talk about that in a second, how that's calculated, and sort of gives you a historical view of threads blocked. So this is what we've seen since we started this account here. And then it kind of gives you the overview of where your appliances are. So I have some on the West Coast, I have some here in Colorado, some a little bit throughout the country, and we have a couple of boxes in Romania. It gives you the information on the recent hosts. So the way this works is that, and this is kind of how all of our aggregator reporting works in Command Center, is that we have essentially a task that runs on the Untangle box itself, and every 12 hours it actually dispenses information about what's currently happening on that box. So this includes some of the reports that we see here below in regards to the bandwidth utilization and application utilization, but also includes the information on the hosts. So this will not be sort of exact up-to-date information. That would be very time-consuming for us to aggregate that across all the boxes, especially in larger deployments. So it's more of a snapshot that we have, and basically every 12 hours we get updated data on this. And then you can actually see kind of the details on the host, similar to what you would see in the host table on the Untangle itself. Then you have your alerts. So these are essentially events that are generated by Untangles in the context of the configuration that you have set up individually on those boxes. And again, similarly, you can click on this and get additional details about the event that's happening and where it's coming from. The audit history is similar to alerts, except this particular event table shows you events that have occurred on your account. So whether it is somebody logging into your account, whether it is some profile information or policy push information changed. So it sometimes does have to do with a specific appliance, or for example, remote access means that something happened on the box. But this is basically top-level account information. And again, you can kind of get into the details here and you can see what's happening. So it'll give you some basic information about who's logging in, where they're logging in from, etc. If we had some recently blocked threats, those would be displayed here, and you'd be able to click on them and be able to get some information about the threat itself that we blocked using our Scout IQ threat intelligence. And last but not least, we have some sort of top-level aggregated reports. So these are some of the most commonly requested reports that we've seen from our customers. And again, it works very much the same way that the host reporting works, where we ping the box about every 12 hours, and we maintain the data from those pings for the duration of 30 days. And so over the course of 30 days, you can kind of see where what bandwidth is consumed by what box, as well as sort of top applications, top domains, and top host names in terms of what the network usage are. So one thing I should mention is similarly to the UI that we have on the Untangle itself. With a lot of these, be sure to check. You can obviously sort and filter, and sometimes there are columns that are hidden. And so if you're not seeing something, be sure to check and make sure that the columns are available, because again, we're trying to kind of provide the most pertinent information on the dashboard, but there's more information under the hood that you can glean out of these dashboards. So on the Appliances tab, you kind of get the overview of your fleet individually. And here, as I mentioned, you can kind of dive into each individual one and see specifically as what's happening on that box itself. All right, so here we get sort of top-level resource utilization. We get information on all the licenses and their expiration dates. We get hosts that are specific to this box itself, as well as the alerts that are only specific to this box. These are all generated by this particular appliance. The backup information, and similarly the aggregated reports, but in this particular case, they're specific to this particular network, and you can sort of see that here there's a lot more granularity in terms of what applications are being used on the dashboard. We kind of have to aggregate to make the data presentable and usable to the onlooker. And of course, we have our remote access functionality, which I'll show in a second, that allows you to get into the box itself. Also here we have ability to update software on the box. So if the updates are available, you can click here, and it will actually trigger a check of the updates from the box. And if updates are ready for that box, it will initiate an update sequence. You can also remove appliances, of course, and you can also add appliances to your account. So let's do this. I will jump onto this guy, and we'll launch remote access. So as I mentioned, remote access works in a slightly different way than sort of just simply exposing the admin interface to the world. First of all, as you can see, that this particular box is running on our internal network. To expose that box to the world would require quite a bit of network reconfiguration. So the way we've designed remote access was really sort of focused around being able to do this securely and not leave the box vulnerable to any kind of brute force attacks that typically would be an issue for an admin page that's accessible to the outside world. So what happens here is that if your Untangle has a cloud option enabled, which is a requirement to sort of manage it via Command Center, it maintains a connection to one of our centralized servers. And it's a very lightweight, TCP connection, and it's just, making sure that the appliance is in fact online, and that we can distribute commands to it when somebody issues a command from Command Center. And the interface to that command interface internally is restricted to our network, so you would not be able to actually ping that box from the outside world. You can only issue a command via our website, which is of course running within the network. And so what happens when you launch remote access, it actually will instruct the box to open an SSH tunnel through one of our systems. Once it does, you'll be able to, essentially, it will return the link to the web portal, and you'll be able to access the appliance directly. So let's take a look at some of the other ones here. Okay, so Policies tab. On the Policies tab, as I mentioned, you are basically able to capture configuration that is specific to each individual application or an overall system setting. So like alerts is a system level setting, it's not specific to an application. And you can pull information from these boxes into the cloud and then subsequently redistribute it to other platforms. You can do that sort of granularly per application, provided that application is enabled on the particular device that you're trying to pull that from. And subsequently, that's stored in the cloud indefinitely. The appliance does not have to be online after that in order for you to be able to replicate that configuration to other boxes. And the idea here is we're not really looking to sort of re-implement the configuration UI that we have on the Untangle itself at this time. And so what we're really looking to do is to kind of employ the configure once, deploy many scenario, which is fairly commonplace. If you're, for example, managing multiple networks, more often than not, your web filtering rules will be the same across all of them. And so there's no, and so the idea is that you would configure your web filtering rules on one box and then subsequently be able to push those rules out to multiple boxes, and they will be replicated on multiple devices. So let me take a look, see here real quick. So the way this works is this. So we have kind of two tiers of applications in the system. So one is sort of a system level app, and the other is a policy specific application. And of course, in order for that to work, you need to have Policy Manager installed as well. So let me launch into one of these other boxes so we can take a look, see. You're seeing these alerts, and I will show you. I think one of the issues is I signed in from multiple locations, and so I'm getting a little bit of flack. So give me 1 second. So in the continuation of the comment about how apparently people don't like silence while stuff is happening, you know, I'm not sure what to do about that. I could tell you a UDP joke, but you probably wouldn't get it. No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to interpret your silence, and whether it's because you guys are muted or because the joke was not funny. I'm not sure what to do about that, because I mean I could tell you a TCP joke, but then I have to keep repeating it until you did get it, and that would just be a waste of time, right?
Good job, Tim. Anyway. You should have your own stand-up show.
Anyway, tough crowd here. Okay, so let's take a look, see here. So I'm being pushed into admin. I think it's because of the settings that I've changed here. And let me actually fix that real quick. So one of the things that we recently implemented is that some people have mentioned that while sort of automatic login during remote access is a very handy feature, some folks who have sort of granular user access configured on the boxes themselves were interested in having this functionality be restricted, or at least have ability to turn off the functionality, so that if you do not necessarily want people to automatically log into the box, we'd be able to turn the remote access off. So there's two security features that we added. One is ability to turn off remote access completely, and the other one is to disable automatic login on remote access. So in other words, you can still open the tunnel to the box and it will bring you to the login page, but it will require credentials in order for you to enter that. And I'll show that to you in a second. But so what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to bring up a box, and we're going to take a look at some of the policies that are currently configured on that box. And then I'll basically show you how the policy push works. Okay, so this box is a world away in Romania, so it's minorly slow, but let's take a look, see here. All right, so I think this box right now is basically set up with our default configuration. After the install, these are the default alerts that are configured here. So one thing that I can do is I have, and so this is a 13.1, I have a policy that's called all alerts enabled, and I believe it does indeed have all alerts enabled. And so what I could do here is set appliance policy. So we'll basically now look through your Untangle configurations and show you all the boxes that are compatible with this particular policy version. And I will choose Alina 2 and initiate a push. So in the previous version, when we originally launched Command Center and Policy Management, the push was done synchronously. The problem with that, of course, is that if you're pushing the policy to a dozen appliances, that can take quite some time. And so we made that in the recent release an asynchronous operation. So it will essentially initiating a policy push will put it into the queue to be pushed, and you will get a notification just like you observed here that the policy didn't get, in fact, get pushed. If you miss a notification, the same information will be available in the audit history, and it will basically say that we did initiate a push to this appliance here. So now if I come back here and refresh, if all went well, we'll have all the alerts configured, which is an insane configuration. I highly recommend against that unless you really want it, because you keep in mind that just because you can't enable an alert does not mean you should. I think we see some people configure alerts for very strange reasons. For example, a BitTorrent session. It's fine if you actually want to do something about it, but if you're purely just notifying that a BitTorrent session in progress, you'll be alerting constantly, which does have a performance implication on your box, especially if you have multiple alerts of that type. So as you can see here, the alert configuration has changed, and so the all alerts policy got pushed. And on a, just to add to the last point, I think one of the things that we do is we provide a lot of flexibility to you guys in terms of what you can do on the box, and ultimately that does allow customer configurations that are not necessarily optimal for themselves. I mean, for example, we do provide you ability to set up an alert when every session is created, but that would be really detrimental to you to do that. So you should pay attention to what you're doing and think about the potential implications that it may have to the performance of your network. Similarly, I think I think the process for pushing policies for applications that are policy specific is very much the same thing. The only thing that changes is the UI associated with policy creation and push. Right. So, for example, if I wanted to create a policy from WebFilter, when I bring up Create Policy dialog, in addition to giving me the list of sort of appliances that I have available for getting the policy, so these are the appliances that do in fact have web filtering installed and configured, it will also give me the policy name that the given configuration is associated with. So, if you're a school and you have a teacher's policy and a student's policy, what may happen is that you can basically pull the configuration of WebFilter for each individual one and then redeploy it analogously to other locations. So here, if I pull a configuration from here, now that information is stored in the cloud. If I want to set the appliance policy, again, it will give me a list of the 13.0 appliances, and I do have a box here that has the example that I mentioned where there's a teachers and students policy, and so I get to pick which specific policy configuration I want to push this web filter profile to. And very much the same way. Basically, it will push your block sites. It will push the categories that you're interested in blocking. It will push the settings associated with those categories, whether those are block outright or just notify, etc. So basically, all the configurations that you see under the web filter tab. One of the things I should mention real quick is that we are working aggressively on building out some of the contextual help here. So if you're having trouble with something, feel free to use this. I highly recommend that. And if you can't find what you're looking for, absolutely feel free to submit a support ticket, and we'll be able to help you out. And then it will also help us drive our documentation a little bit more in terms of figuring out which holes we need to fill in terms of the functionality there. Okay, so let me move on to the account management. So as I mentioned, this is very much the same stuff that you see in my account in Untangle.com. You're able to edit your contact information, your login information, addresses, billing info. This particular account does not have subscriptions associated with it. Let me I will bring up one that does, so I can kind of give you the overview of what that looks like. If this account was a partner account, then you would have another tab here that allows you to manage your partner information. I will go through users in more details in a second. This last section is the account settings section. So that's kind of new and specific to Command Center. So here you have a couple of security settings as well as the user interface settings. And I check back in here periodically because we are constantly sort of adding new things in here. You know, as we sort of plan to make some of the dashboard widgets configurable like we do on the firewall itself. All that stuff is going to kind of pop up in here. So before I kind of dive into that, let me just show you all of the functionality that you currently have in my account, but give you a little bit of a different UI associated with that. So there's nothing, I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of what can happen here. You can toggle out a renewal, you can initiate an upgrade, request a renewal quote, and of course you can manage the subscription, which can involve either assigning it to an appliance that you own, or you could transfer it to another user if you are managing untangles for other organizations. That can sometimes be useful. And so if you're a partner, you can purchase subscription from us and then deliver it to your customers, and you can do that via this interface here. And with Invoice, it's the same thing. It's pretty self-explanatory. You just kind of see the dates, and you can download the invoice itself as need be. Okay, so a little bit on this remote access appliances. So as I mentioned, we got these requests saying that you know, potentially we want to be able to disable remote access via Command Center and only enable it where we need to, as well as enable or disable automatic login. So there's a couple of stipulations here. Obviously, if you can disable a remote access and then enable it via Command Center, you're still kind of dealing with an issue of what happens if somebody gets a hold of your credentials. And so the way we sort of approach this scenario is that if you're changing the account settings to less secure state, you will need to follow additional steps in order to verify that you actually requested the change. So in this particular case, if I disable remote access and save my settings, everything's been saved, and it will take a refresh for us to sort of capture this. But if I do quickly refresh here, it will essentially disable the remote access button. So you will no longer be able to access that button until you re-enable that setting. So if we go in here, you can now see that this button is disabled. Now, if you want to change that back, now this is going in sort of our view from a secure configuration to a potentially less secure configuration. It will ask you to confirm this change. And so let me do this real quick. So it says an account review, an email has been sent to the account owner, and so it will require additional confirmation. Okay. And so I get an email that looks approximately like this. And it basically notifies me that somebody requested this change to be made. If I have not requested a change, you should contact support. That potentially means that the account's been compromised. And so you can confirm the activity. And if you're already logged in, it will just say success. If you have not logged in yet, then it'll ask you to log in, and then it will confirm the activity. And then once you've done that, the settings on the account will be set. And so again, you know, since I'm logged in already, I'll need to refresh this. And I know you guys are seeing some of the alerts popping up. I'll cover this in a second. I have a few set up, so every action I take, I'm getting an email about, and there's probably a Slack alert and maybe a page duty generated, and I'm sure my IT team is not particularly happy right now, but so it goes. So the settings back enabled, and if we go back here, the remote access button is enabled as well. And so the automatic login works very much the same way. If you disable automatic login, that's going to a more secure configuration. It will take place right away. If you wanted to re-enable automatic login, then you will need to follow the email confirmation process and confirm that you actually requested these changes. So let's talk about users. So the user functionality, as I mentioned, is really sort of targeted towards organizations where you might have multiple people working in the IT department, or you might be an MSP and you have multiple customers under your account umbrella, and you want to be able to control access to these accounts and to these boxes. So it works pretty simply, right? So you specify the users that you would like to invite to your account. I'm going to specify myself. I don't trust anyone else. And so basically the invitation will be issued, and right now you'll kind of see that there's a placeholder user has been added to your account, has not confirmed anything, has not responded to an invitation or anything like that. So I get an email that looks like this. Doesn't have my name yet, so it says, hey, Cloud Engineering has added you to the Command Center account, and you got to follow the link below to complete the registration. Now, before I do that, so once the user have not accepted the invitation yet, but at this point you're able to sort of say once they join the account, what appliances they have access to. And so here, I have a whole bunch of boxes on my account, but let's say I want the mini-me have only access to 2 boxes. So here it basically shows you what appliances this account will have permissions to access. So now, following this link, which I'll bring up in Incognito tab, so it doesn't mess up with my session, it will essentially bring me to the user registration screen. In the future, we are planning to provide alert notifications via SMS. So in consideration of that, I do suggest that you, if you're interested in that functionality, that you specify a phone number here that is capable of accepting notifications, and that's going to be rolling out in the months ahead. Okay, so I've created my user. And now, so again, I'm on the Incognito tab, so it's going to log me into a separate instance of Command Center. And in this particular case, as you could see, I get very much the same dashboard. However, I only get access to the appliances that the administrator has assigned to me under this account. You will get access to all of the previous policy configurations, and the reasoning behind that is that you may have your master appliance that you don't want anybody to touch, but you have configurations that you've saved from that appliance that you want to be able to redistribute it to multiple devices. So anything that's any kind of setting configurations that you have saved in the cloud will be accessible here in case I want to push that or have my admins push that to the appliances that they manage. And then, of course, under the account tab, you have a very narrow functionality here, just being able to manage your information. Meanwhile, if I come back here and I refresh this grid here, so I can see that this user has joined, you can see when they logged in last time, and all associated details associated with that. Now, the other, obviously, you can sort of add permissions as you see fit. You can remove the users, resend invitations if they have not accepted their invite. Somebody lost it in their spam folder or whatever. You can send that out again. Okay. Now let's take a look at the alerts. So you guys probably seen a whole bunch of them pop up in my lower right-hand corner here, I have a few configured already, and I'll explain why in a second. So basically, the alerts functionality comes in sort of two steps. First is that you create notification profiles. A notification profile is essentially what we will execute once a certain notification occurs. So you may have certain alerts, like I have here, that are just info alerts. That's no big deal. You just kind of want to be aware. An example of that, I don't know, maybe that somebody logged in. You don't necessarily want to send out a PagerDuty alert. You just want to be notified of that, I don't know, in Slack channel or something like that, that somebody's logging into a box in your account. Again, alerts are not accessible to users you invite to your account because because alerts are account-wide, so they will impact all the appliances that you have, and so we'll leave it up to the admin and essentially the account owner to be able to establish these and then monitor these. And then there's some alerts that you actually do want to issue a real alert to. You know, for the Slack, for example, and I'll show you, we differentiate in terms of the color that it shows up in. You might be wanting to send it to a different channel. PagerDuty, you might have a different sort of incident type associated with a particular alert, and email is pretty self-explanatory. So once you have your notification profile set up, you basically create alert rules, and then you can assign notification profiles that should be triggered when a certain type of alert occurs. So let me just backtrack here for a second and show you the different types of alert rules that we have. So the adding of the notification profile is pretty straightforward. So you basically provide individual fields. So the default one is email, and then you can change it to webhook. We are working on creating some webhook templates for some of the commonly used integrations like Slack, PagerDuty, Jira, VictorOps, what have you. And so we'll have those that kind of simplify the configuration a little bit. Right now, it's pretty raw, and so you have to know a little bit about REST APIs in order to be able to set that up. But it's actually not that hard. So let me show you a couple that we got here. Right. So the emailing dev team essentially will send an email to cloud engineering at entangle.com. And you can specify the subject and body, and you can encode some of the alert elements into the subject and body of the email. So essentially, these are variables, if you will, and basically, when we generate the message in order to send to your account, we will encode the variables that are contained in the fields here using the information above. Right. So here, you may have seen that I've received a couple of production alerts that look like this. Pop this out. So this basically corresponds to the subject line, so production alert, and then we have event type and event message. So event type in this particular case is audit, so it's just something that's happening on the account level. The event message is kind of the summary message of the alert. And then we have the event itself encoded into the body of the email. So the event itself contains the payload information associated with the event. This is a little bit wonky, so let me just bring up my trusty Notepad++ here. You kind of see the entire payload, right? So this is how we see the alert on the back end, and that's how it's stored in the database. We have the ID. We have the IP information associated with the request. So in this particular case, it's capturing my IP, who initiated the request. And then for things like account settings updates, it will actually tell you what the new settings were. You know, that's also information that you do have available to you in the audit events. Let's see here. So it's basically the same. The details in the audit event are the same as the payload in that email that I was showing you, and you can get more details kind of as to what happened here. Now, similarly, so that's the email, and that's pretty straightforward. We do require that the emails that you specify in these fields are associated with your account for obvious reasons. So keep that in mind. And if you have some kind of a distribution list or something like that, then you essentially would go through the process of adding them as a user to your account, so that you can actually send notifications to those. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunity for abuse here if somebody wants to create some meaningless alerts and link to some spam or whatever. For webhook notifications, it's a sort of a similar scenario, but obviously the fields are a little different, right? So you got your name and description, then you have your endpoint URL associated with your integration. These will differ depending on the service that you use. You can specify custom headers if any are required. So, for example, for PagerDuty, you need to specify some auth token here, and for most of those secure APIs. The method, we support get, post, and put. No deleting stuff here. Again, the same variables are available for you to encode into the body of the payload, and here you're able to basically specify, based on the protocol, how you want the stuff to be displayed, right? So here, for the, we have a Slack alert defined, I think very much the same way between two versions that we have. So we have Slack alert, which will have a red notification defined in Slack, and it's posting to our webhook channel, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And then we have a very similar alert defined for info, but the only difference is that it'll show up with a different color. But here you can actually specify a different summary. You can potentially have a different endpoint that sends it to a different channel. Obviously, change configurations per Slack documentation as you see fit. And so the way that looks is that in our Slack channel and Cloud Webhooks, you kind of see these things coming in very similar with the details that we see in the email, right? So here you kind of get the timestamp, the summary string, as well as the details associated with the alert as per definition here. So for the details, we're encoding the body string of the event. Okay, so that's Slack. Slack's pretty straightforward. We do have a PagerDuty integration. That's what we use internally in our IT, and I'll show you what that looks like real quick. So essentially here, I've configured that account update settings will be sent to the dev team, and that's the emails that you've seen you receive. Logins and activity of that nature will just go to Slack. Policy push will go to PagerDuty. And so if we look at the PagerDuty, which I think I have somewhere over here. So in Slack, essentially you can set up a service. In PagerDuty you can set up a service, and in our case we set up a service command center that's generating these events, and they actually have a pretty good API documentation associated with that. And so what you'd see is if I were to go here and do a quick policy push, let's disable the alerts that were previously enabled. So this will go to a couple of boxes. And so if I go back to here and do a quick refresh, so I know it already got generated because I saw it pop up in our Slack channel, because we also have PagerDuty integrated back into Slack. But so here you could see, and this will if you have PagerDuty app on your phone, etc., configured, you will actually see all the details. And so here we'll bring you into the details. The custom details are broken up in the interface, and it will give you a link to the command center to go deal with this. And so from here, you can decide what you want to do, whether you want to resolve it or assign it to somebody, etc. And like I said, I think in the near future, we will create kind of a canned definition for some of these webhooks so that you guys don't have to worry about the nitty-gritty of defining the JSON payload and so forth. And we'll really sort of boil it down to just you being able to specify the authentication token that's used for your account, and we'll take it from there. Okay. We have a little bit of time left. I think I covered just about everything I wanted to cover.
Timur, I got some questions for you.
Okay.
There was one question about policies and pushing them. When you push the policies, does it overwrite on the existing policies that are on the appliance already?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because the policy definition basically contains all of the settings associated with that app. And so it does not do any kind of a merge. It will just be a complete override.
Okay, great. I think that's about all the questions, unless anyone else wants to submit any in the Q&A box. There were some specific questions. The remote access does allow you to access that specific appliance, as Timur showed. Timur, did you want to mention about the licensing?
Yes. So Command Center requires that your box be at least 12.2, I believe. I really, at this point, there's no reason that it should not be 13.1. That was an awesome release, and you guys should check it out. And it does require a complete license. A complete license is required to do some of the advanced level functionality, like pushing policy, perform remote access. Complete license is used to determine whether we're going to actually send up information from the appliance at these 12-hour periods that I mentioned in order to aggregate them in the command center. You will have sort of top-level visibility into your box if it's not complete or if it's below 12.2 in Command Center. So it'll be listed here just like it's listed under My Account on Untangle.com, and you'll be able to do things like manage subscriptions associated with it. But in order to sort of get the full capability of the Command Center with reporting and alerting, you do need to have a complete license.
Great, thank you. Can you head back to the slides really quick?
Mm-hmm.
So as Timur mentioned, you must have complete package. We do offer 5 appliances that are included, and you can find the pricing for above 5 on our website. As always, our pricing is available for anyone to see. Next slide. So if you are confused about Command Center, or you're new to Untangle, or anything, we do offer professional services. And if you just have no idea what works for your network, you can contact us at sales@untangle.com, and we're happy to discuss how Untangle and Command Center could possibly help in your network. And I think that's about all the questions. Want to go to the next slide? Last slide, I think. All right, so as I mentioned, we have a bunch of resources, sales@untangle.com, support@untangle.com. We have a wiki as well as a forums. Wiki is more of a technical documentation. Forums is more of community-based, so you can ask our engineers or each other questions on how Untangle and Command Center work in your environment. As Timur mentioned, we just released version 13.1 for our NG Firewall product yesterday. We will have a community webinar next week on that to discuss all the new features. Dirk Morris, our Chief Product Officer, will go through all of the new features with that release. And as always, this webinar was recorded, so the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. You'll be getting a follow-up email tomorrow morning with that. So check out our next webinars. If we didn't get to your question, I apologize. Please send us an email. We'll be happy to assist you. Thank you, Timur, for the great demonstration. And as he mentioned, a lot of these features get pushed because it's a cloud-based product, so keep a lookout for new features coming down the road.
And if you have any features that you'd like to see, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love the feedback. Obviously, we're trying to work towards making network management easier for everyone. So please don't hesitate to reach out and submit your ideas and desires, and keep the communication channel open through all of the resources that we're available.
All right. Thanks so much, Timur. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.